What's Yaakov doing?
Well, he should be looking for his family, but he seems to be caught up in something else.
Exactly, like you're saying, something is going on over here. Parshat Vayetze. This week, we see Yaakov Avinu leaving his home, leaving his house where he grew up, and traveling all the way to Padan Aram to meet his family. But just before he gets to meet Racehl, there's an entire story that goes on in the psukim that we sometimes forget, and sometimes we don't even notice. When Yaakov gets to the well, he meets the people there and strikes up a conversation with them. And this conversation is so important to him that he even almost misses Racehl arriving, because they tell him, here Racehl is coming. And Yaakov doesn't turn to her. He's actually continuing his conversation with them. Supposedly, they are more important. So, what is going on with this conversation? What is Yaakov doing? What's so important about this conversation, this back and forth between Yaakov to them? Why, if they're waiting for all the other shepherds to arrive in order to take this rock off the well, Yaakov manages to take it off himself when Racehl arrives? What is this discussion about? What is going on between these shepherds, Yaakov and Racehl, just before Yaakov Avinu meets Racehl Imenu? And why is this so critical to understanding the story of Yaakov Avinu and who Yaakov Avinu is?
Well, I think as you're saying, to truly understand this story, we need to look at the fuller context. What are we learning here about Yaakov? What are we trying to understand? What is the Torah doing? And I think we've mentioned this in the past, that although originally we saw Yaakov as the Ish Tam Yoshev Alim versus Esav, who was out in the field, he was the spiritual person and he was the physical person. From the moment that he got the bracha from Yitzchak, the bracha that was intended for Esav was given to Yaakov, from that moment on, Yaakov has to be both. Yaakov is going to learn how to become both. And when he comes back, as we discussed in Parshat Vayishlach, he already is the one who can bring those worlds together, who can be in this world and express that spirituality. So I think the story here, and especially the beginning of the story, is really us getting to know this new Yaakov. Yaakov, who's going to be the forefather who teaches this to us, who teaches us how to survive Galut, who teaches us how to survive darkness, who, as Chazal say, established Tfilat Arvit, the davening we daven at night. He's the one who's able to go through Esav and Lavan and all the challenges to be able to come out whole, to be able to elevate this world, to find the beauty within this world, not to disconnect from it, not to run away from it, but the opposite, to be a part of it and to use that spiritual side to go into this world and raise it up. And in that context, I think we can understand the story here. The first thing we see is Yaakov meeting these shepherds, or they're supposed to be shepherds, sitting around the well. And besides for asking where the family is, he gets into this conversation almost giving them musar, telling them off. What are you sitting around here and doing nothing? What are you waiting for? You have a job. And maybe this is the beginning of the story of Yaakov that we will see soon, the dedicated worker who works for Lavan for so many years and is so loyal. And we see him seeing people who are supposed to be working and saying, what are you doing? And their answer is interesting. They say, we're sitting and waiting. Why are we waiting? Because we need everyone to be here, and only then we can remove the rock. And this is interesting because, as you said, just later, we'll see Yaakov just move the rock on his own. So what exactly is going on here? There's some sort of contrast between them just sitting around and waiting and Yaakov who's actually doing. And then when Racehl is finally coming with the sheep, the Torah describes a very interesting pasuk. Yaakov sees Racehl, the daughter of Lavan, who's the brother of Rivka, and he sees the sheep, which is Lavan's sheep, who is the brother of Rivka. You just told us this, he's the brother of Rivka. We know he's the brother of Rivka. This is why he's coming here. What is going on here? And maybe based on what we said before, we can understand this, because this is the strength of Yaakov. Yaakov is within this world, and this world isn't really perfect. And there are always things missing, and there are always problems. And if you're looking for the problems, you'll always have a reason to sit back like these shepherds and wait for a solution. You can't. You need to wait for everyone, but everyone will come. We'll be able to move it off. That's one approach to the world, is constantly seeing the problem, constantly looking at the negatives, constantly being stuck because the world is a rough place, especially for someone coming from a spiritual place like Yaakov. But it's the opposite. Yaakov has the ability to go into this world and see the treasures and see the light and see the potential. He doesn't see the problem. He sees the potential behind it. He right away, and the word that stands out here that Yaakov sees, he sees this sheep, he sees Racehl, Rachel. But he doesn't get stuck with the fact that it's Lavan, which could be a negative thing. Lavan's a rough family member to live at. This is a rough father-in-law. But Yaakov doesn't see that. He sees his mother in there. He sees the potential. He sees that just like his mother came out of that home, there must be some potential there. There must be some light that he can focus on. And that's why when he sees the sheep, he doesn't see sheep of Lavan. He doesn't see Lavan. He doesn't see the problems. He sees Rivka. He sees potential. And the same with Rachel. And this maybe explains why he just goes right away and takes the water and waters the sheep and kisses Racehl. He already sees the future. He already sees his wife of the future. He sees the mother of Am Yisrael. He's not stuck in the present. And that is the strength that allows him to deal with this world. What usually causes people to get lost, to get stuck, is the fact that they can't see beyond the present, that they only see what's wrong, what's missing, what's actually negative, what's objectively negative. He doesn't see that. He sees the potential. He sees what he could do. And therefore, when there's a need to bring out that water, as opposed to all the others that sit around and say, we can't till everyone comes, he just comes and moves it. Yaakov wasn't necessarily physically stronger than everybody else, but that spiritual strength, he had a drive. They were looking at the problems. He saw the potential. He saw the light, and he was able to move that rock. And from here on, we will see him moving all the rocks that are in his way and finding that water that's buried under it. This is Yaakov Avinu, who teaches us how to deal with the galut, how to deal with the night, how to deal with the challenges in this world.
Beautiful. And yeah, exactly like you're saying, Yaakov Avinu tells us and shows us how you take the spiritual world and you connect it to the physical world. We've discussed this many times, and this is what Am Yisrael is. This is what Yaakov Avinu was. He was the one to take the physical world around us, to take the materialistic world around us and not be blinded by it, but add into it the spiritual level and see everything in the physical world that's in front of his eyes in a more spiritual way. And really, like you were saying, when you look at the world in earthly eyes, in so-called realistic eyes, you can get blinded by what you see and you can only see the negative. But really everything in this world, in the physical world, has a spiritual purpose, has a more bigger meaning to it, that you have to take the two together. You can't take only one side without the other, because otherwise you will get lost. And really, when Yaakov Avinu arrives at this well, he is told that here Racehl is coming with the tzon. And then the Torah repeats it again, that Racehl ba im hatzon. She's with the tzon together. Racehl knows exactly what it means to be a shepherd, because really when you look at the psukim, this is the amazing thing, is when you learn and look at the psukim, each word, and you try to pay attention to what's in the psukim and what's not. When Yaakov Avinu arrives over there, he does not talk to the shepherds. The Torah does not mention him meeting people. He meets a drei tzon. He meets the flocks. He meets the cattle. He doesn't meet any shepherds, meaning they are not doing their job as shepherds. And really the first shepherd that Yaakov actually meets is Racehl, as the pasuk says, that Racehl comes with the tzon, and she's the shepherd. Ki ro'ah hi. She is the one that understands what does it mean to be a shepherd. And we know the famous midrash about Moshe Rabbeinu. What does it mean to be a shepherd? A shepherd is not only somebody who's a leader and has his flock behind him and he takes the flock wherever he wants. No, it's somebody that actually cares for the tzon, cares for the flock that he's leading, cares for the sheep behind him. Moshe Rabbeinu that went after that little goat and then carried him on his shoulder, and that's why he became our biggest leader. That's what a shepherd is. That's what Racehl Imenu is. And remembering the other story we have of Eliezer, that he went to the well, like we mentioned a couple of weeks ago, when Eliezer asked HaKadosh Baruch Hu to help him find the right wife for Yitzchak, the one with the right midot, with the right characteristic, that will behave the same way Sarah behaved. He looks for that chesed. He looks for that understanding of what it means to be a leader, what it means to be an ima for Am Yisrael, a mother for our nation. The same thing Yaakov, when he sees Racehl, he sees a shepherd. He sees the difference between her and the one sitting there. He straight away understands that she knows what it means to be an ima, what it means to be Racehl Imenu in the future. What does it mean to be a leader of a nation? And once Yaakov turns to them and says, you are not doing your job as shepherds. You might think that you are leaders and you have leadership skills and you know what it means to be a leader, but there's nobody following you. You're not taking care of the ones you're supposed to take care of. As to Racehl, that she's always with the tzon. Iba im hatzon. Yaakov Avinu straight away sees that Racehl Imenu also understands that the world around her is more than just a physical thing that exists in front of her eyes, but everything has a bigger meaning. Everything has a bigger purpose. And if she's a shepherd, then she has to take care of this tzon. She has to take care of these sheep. And as we discussed many times, the beauty of the Hebrew language, where we have words that sound the same, but actually have different meanings, especially when there's letters that switch with each other. So we see right here as a great example where Racehl Imenu, as we said, she's a ro'ah, she's a shepherd. And the next few words is that Yaakov Avinu ro'eh, with an Aleph, that he sees, comparing these two, that Racheil is a ro'ah, Yaakov is a ro'eh. This is the perfect Shiduch. As we know, many years later, David HaMelech, who was the shepherd, and also with his ability to see, we won't get into it because it's very long, but this concept of being a shepherd, being able to see to the future, like you mentioned, being able to see the physical world in front of them, but also combining it with the spiritual, with the purpose behind it, is what makes this Shiduch such a perfect Shiduch between Yaakov Avinu and Racheil Imenu in order to build our nation. And this is what makes Yaakov Avinu, like you said, take the Evan off the well, even though the negative in front of him, he still pushes forwards. But yet again, at the end of the Parsha, when it's time to go back to Eretz Yisrael and leave all the story of Lavan behind him, he knows to put the stone back in its place with the matzeva, make a reminder for himself. And this is what prepares him for the struggle with the Malach, and reminds him and reminds us that Am Yisrael are not afraid from the long way, lo mefached miderech haruka, because for us, it's always the physical world with the spiritual world. And this is how we continue moving forward in any time.
It's interesting you point out about similar words. There's actually words that are written exactly the same here in the story that repeat themselves one after each other. Vayashk et hatzon, he gave water to the sheep, and vayishak, right after, he kisses Racheil. What's the connection between these two words? But maybe this ties to what we were saying Yaakov's role in the world is. Yaakov is the one that's vayishak. The word lahashik means to bring two things close, to make them connected. We have this term in a mikvah that's called hashaka, when you connect two sources of water together. That's bringing two things in a way that they can take from each other, bringing them close enough. So bringing the water to the tzon is vayash, and a connection. The neshika is also representing a connection where one will be able to give to each other and grow from each other. Yaakov is the one, as we said, finds these connections. He sees the world, he sees the challenges, but instead of looking what's wrong, he looks beyond the challenges and sees where they connect at the core, where they connect at the source, what their meaning is. And from that place of lehashik, of lechaber, finding those connections, Yaakov is the one who's mechaber, is able to enter what is referred to in Kabbalah, this world, as Alma de Peruda, the world that's separated. Everything seems going against each other, contradicting each other, and to find that connection. Yaakov is sometimes called Bariach HaTichon. In the Mishkan, where we had the poles on the outside, there was the middle pole that connected them all together. That's the strength of Yaakov, connecting us together, Shema Yisrael, connecting the worlds together. And that, I think, is also expressed here in the Vayash and Vayishak that we see here in this small little story that we almost missed.
Exactly. Beautiful what you're saying. And really, there's so much more to unwrap over here. We've touched some very deep topics, very deep ideas of Roeh and Roeh, Vayashk, Vayishak, and also the Evan that Yaakov puts when he goes to Haran, when he meets Racheil, and then later on that he puts on again when he leaves Lavan for the last time. But we're out of time, so we'll have to end here. We'll just remind our viewers what we discussed last year. Last year, we discussed the dreams that Yaakov has in the Parsha. Everybody likes to talk about the first dream, but Yaakov actually has a couple of dreams in this week's Parsha. We'll link that video right now. And if you like this video, please feel free to comment on it, like the video itself, and of course, share it with your friends. And if you haven't yet subscribed to the channel, please make sure to subscribe and help us grow it. Shkoyach Yitzi.
Shkoyach Tuvia, Shabbat Shalom.
Shabbat Shalom, and we'll talk again next week. For more Talking Torah videos on different topics, check out our YouTube channel.